Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the film The Old Guard 2. Now, we were very excited for this movie, but stay tuned to see how we feel about this movie now that we've seen it, Needless to say, I think this is going to be a really fun episode, so that's always a good time, Sarah, kick us off with an IMDb summary for The Old Guard 2.
All right, here we go. Andy leads immortal warriors against a powerful enemy threatening their group. They grapple with the resurfacing of a long-lost immortal, complicating their mission to safeguard humanity.
So that's what the movie was about.
It's a little hard to tell, right, when you're watching?
Yeah, I'm glad I needed the IMDb one sentence summary to help me understand what happened in this film,
That's a sign of successful screenwriting, is when you need to go look at the summary to see what the movie was about. That is a sure sign of success.
You did your job,
Absolutely.
And this is not like a Inception one where you go and read about it and you're like, oh, that's what's about. No, it's like the other side of the spectrum, So needless to say, this is going to be a fun review, I am sure. Very excited about it. Okay, one sentence summaries in Movies and Us tradition. Sarah, what is yours?
Mine is immortality isn't all it's cracked up to be.
No, honestly, this is like the worst marketing for immortality I've ever seen. Like, I'm glad to be a mortal human being here on Earth. Thank you to the Old Guard too for helping us feel better about our impending deaths,
The finite nature of our lives, yeah.
Yeah. This is great. We love to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my one sentence summary is best friendship transcends the centuries.
Sure does. Those BFF, bracelets or whatever, those like charm bracelets where it's like two halves of the BFFs, those last forever.
Honestly,
that's an unbreakable bond.
Maybe Quinn should have given her that instead of her necklace, like a best friendship. That's what they were missing.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yes. Yeah, that's what she was upset about the whole time. She didn't get one in return.
Yeah.
I gave you my necklace. You didn't give me yours.
Exactly. Reciprocity is important in any friendship. What are we doing here, folks?
Right. Quinn
give and take.
Andy didn't give her any memento as she suffocated at the bottom of the ocean for 500 years. Like at least a token of something to hold on to, of hope.
Yeah. Andy just took. She didn't give anything. What the heck?
I know, right? We're starting off strong. Okay.
We are. Oh, no.
Well, let's share our thoughts about the film. I think maybe we've shown our cards already at this point.
Oh, yeah.
So, thoughts about The Old Guard 2. We won't spoil this movie quite yet. It is on Netflix. If you need a good time on a Tuesday night, honestly, watch this movie with some of your besties. And you're going to have a good time in some way. So, Sarah, thoughts about The Old Guard 2? Man, we loved this first one. So, I'm curious your thoughts about the second one.
Yeah, the second one is not good. I really hated this movie a lot. I think the dialogue is bad. The structure and pacing of this film makes no sense at all. Even Charlize Theron couldn't save this. Like, that is saying something. Her and Uma Thurman, like, those two together could not save this film. There's some serious problems there. So, like, I was so upset watching The Old Guard 2. I watched that last night. And so then today, I had to rewatch The Old Guard because...
You did? I'm so glad you did.
Because I was so upset watching The Old Guard 2. And I was like, have I made The Old Guard into this bigger thing than it actually is. In my
Mm,
mind, did I make it better than it actually was? Because I haven't watched The Old Guard since it came out 5 years ago. So
yeah.
then I rewatched it today and it freaking rocks. Like, that's such a good movie. And so I'm now more upset about The Old Guard too. And the way that it like
Mm,
retconned things in there. It took some really interesting pieces in the first movie and completely wiped them away to bring in some new things that don't make sense. It was just so frustrating. And even the dialogue in the first one is quite good. And then you
yeah.
go to the Old Guard 2, and it's just, ugh.
It's
It's almost, it's like painfully boring to watch the Old Guard 2. It's just not a good movie. So I'm upset that they
oh.
did this to such a good time with
Mm,
the first movie and that they made the second
mhm.
one so bad.
Mhm. The pendulum swing is wild on this one. I think it's easy to expect a like okay sequel of an okay movie, but when the first one rocks and the second one absolutely just falters, you're like, what happened here? You had the world building, you had the rules of the world. Just tell an okay story within the constraints you've already created. Wild how much we fall so far. um yeah, the highest praise and the greatest diss in the world of Jen and Sarah for a movie is this should have been a watch along. And that's how I felt watching this movie. I'm just flaming this movie the whole time as it's happening. And I'm like doing it as I'm watching it by myself at home. I'm like, man, this would have been so funny for us to just spew uh all of our feelings on this movie, like scene to scene, moment to moment, because there's so much to comment on that doesn't work. I'm so highly impressed that this movie could be so bad. I think I use this metaphor often, but getting every answer wrong on the test is actually a more difficult task than getting like a subset of the questions wrong. And I think this one pretty much gets all the questions wrong. And I have to say, I'm quite impressed at it. I think it'll be a fun exercise for us at some point in this episode to like comment on things that we think might have worked or could have worked, just as an exercise in expanding our minds, But on the whole, I think from the opening scene specifically, I knew this is going to be a bumpy ride. I think that opening scene is everything that this film doesn't understand that the viewers need or want. So this honestly it was a really comical experience watching it. I actually had a funny time watching it. So like we said, find some besties, your best friendships that transcend centuries, and go watch this movie with them because you'll have a great time. Okay, well, on that note, spoiler alert for the old guard 2. We're about to dive fully into this movie. Yeah, we're about to roast this movie real good. So come along, go watch this movie and come back and have some fun with us. Okay, I actually, before we talk about like what didn't work in this film, I actually think it's really interesting to see the things that don't work at all in this film as an exercise of just seeing like how much that is the opposite of what we need as viewers, like almost seeing the opposite of what's good is actually a really interesting process and exercise. So I kind of was like thinking about this film from that angle a lot of the time, is analyzing like why is this not working so badly, and that often will point to the things that really help a scene shine, even devoid of the movie in general, just a scene. Like, why do some things work so well and some things work not at all? And this is a film that I think is interesting because it doesn't work not because it's problematic. There's a lot of films that are problematic. Like they communicate a message that's really toxic, or they push forward an ideology that is like really not great. Like I'm thinking about Looking at You, Blonde, the Netflix film about I think Marilyn Monroe. This movie's not bad because it's problematic, which actually makes it more interesting. It's purely from a screenwriting, character development, filmmaking perspective that doesn't work, and that's actually kind of fun. So love the old guard 2 existing for that reason. But yeah, I'm curious for you. What are some bits specifically that really stood out to you as like big misses that were pretty like interesting to think about?
Well, I think a good place to start is the fact that it's not a whole movie, it's
Yep.
half a story. Like,
Hmm.
and even that, it feels like what they did is that they had like 2.5 hours worth of a story, and they said, hey, you know what we could do? We could split this into two movies. And that's what they did, because there almost isn't. So this is like an hour and 40 something minutes,
Yeah.
and even in that, it feels, at least for me, it felt like such a slog to get through, and so many interactions took so much longer than they should have been.
Mm,
I feel like there's like an hour worth of content in this hour and 45-minute movie. Like, so I think that's the first problem, is it seems like they took a much longer script and
mm,
split it into two movies. And that just, I don't know, it just didn't work for me. I think the setup of it all is wrong, and then even what our characters were going after the whole time, I was like,
yeah.
what are we doing? I don't understand what we're doing. And then there was nothing interesting really explored in any of the characters, where I feel like in the first one every character is dealing with something interesting
Hmm.
that all coincides with the plot in some way. Whereas this one is just kind of like, okay, well, Andy's mortal and Booker wants to die. So then he gives his immortality to her, which that whole thing doesn't make sense, but it's fine. And then Uma Thurman is bad. So we have to go after her. And a bomb happens. Sure. It's like, what? This movie doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I knew we were in for it when in the opening scene, I have no idea what we're trying to do. We're thrown into action, which is a tactic that a lot of action movies do, which is like big, fun, spritzy set piece to get you hooked, right? And to get your adrenaline pumping. That's fine. I have no idea who's on which side, why we are attacking this location, what our mission is. There's literally no context. It actually feels like I started this movie like 30 minutes into another movie, and I missed the first 20 minutes because maybe I couldn't find parking, and I also like needed to go get popcorn. Like I really felt like I was thrown into something and I had no context for what's happening, and I didn't even know who the characters were and which sides they were on, which I think is really interesting. Obviously, there's a task that I think a sequel needs to do to ground you back in what the world is, who the team is, a little fast, like, oh, remember the first movie kind of thing. And there's a way to do that really elegantly. And if you can't do that, then do what Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning does, which is literally take like 10 minutes to tell us what happened. That's fine too, because at least I'm like, all right, I have the information I need. Now let's start the movie 10 minutes in. So I would have preferred if the old guard 2 did even an ounce of that, so that I understood who's on which side and what we're doing here and why. I think that was quite notable, and I think is a big representation of how this film doesn't know what the viewers need and when, and somehow missed a big point to land and context to land in order to make the scene shine the way that it needs to shine. So rough opening, and I think telling of the like lack of screenwriting intuition that this movie just seems to have completely missed.
Yeah, because it's also that the first movie came out 5 years ago.
Yeah,
This movie didn't come out like last year.
yeah.
It has been a lot of years, and a lot has happened in those 5 years. I feel like I've aged like 20 years in those 5 years. So I didn't remember the first movie. Okay. I
Yeah, no
remembered
idea.
Charlize Theron because she's amazing. I remember the two dudes in a couple. I thought that one of them had died though, so I don't know where I got that in my brain. So when he showed up, I was like, "Oh wait, you're alive." I very much misremembered the first movie then. So like I had a very tenuous grasp on even these characters. I didn't even
Yeah.
remember that Copley was in the first movie. Like,
Yeah.
I had forgotten so much. And then they just dropped me in, and I'm like, okay, there's Charlize, there's the two dudes, there's Kiki Lane. Okay, I
Yes.
remember them. I know nothing else of this world, though. And the film
Mhm.
didn't do anything to help me get there. And that's kind of a basic principle of a sequel is like,
Yeah.
hello, people aren't going to do their homework like me. So you need to catch us up because I did not watch the first movie before I watched this movie.
Mhm.
And the film is just like, nah, man, you're just going to remember. It's fine. Was not fine.
Yeah. You'll be fine. I
No.
think I didn't even remember who was on our team. Like, and we're just thrown in. Like, even a short sequence where we see the team huddled together. This is our plan. At least I can remember faces to know when we are in the midst of action. Who am I rooting for again? Like, I literally just see men's bodies colliding, stabbing each other, shooting each other. And I'm like, okay, that one, guy two just jabbed guy one in the chest. Like, am I supposed to be happy about that or not? Like, was this a win or not? Because I actually don't remember whose side is on who. And it's just kind of like anonymous faces fighting each other. And I'm like, wait, hold on. Did I miss something? Literally, I actually like hovered over to be like, did I just like start halfway in? Because I don't know, someone else on my account started this too. And so what makes action so thrilling is we know who to root for and we can see when they're winning and we feel the adrenaline rush of that and then we feel the fear when they are losing and they're being stabbed and they're in danger. So not having any context of who's on which side and who I'm supposed to be rooting for really made that opening sequence quite an interesting experience to watch. I felt like I was like almost seeing a movie happening, you know, when you like walk into the room and you're like, oh, people are fighting, but I don't know why and who and how. So yeah, that was a fascinating choice in the opening. I think the other aspect that makes that opening scene also not work as well is that what I do remember from the first movie is that there's this concept of immortality and that they can't die. But they kind of like mention it between each other, and I think Andy mentions that she's mortal now, and so I actually also don't know while people are fighting each other who is mortal and who is immortal. I think that's another miss from this movie in general is it's constantly unclear who's got it and who's not got it. Like so without that clarity going into the action scenes, I think it also makes it a little hazy because I'm like, all right, if you're getting stabbed, like, do I need to not worry about you and I should go worry about somebody else? I don't know who to worry about. So the lack of clarity about which of our main characters have that protection and don't, the plot armor, literal plot armor, and don't, I think was also an interesting dynamic that was like really hazy throughout a lot of the film.
I think the other piece of the opening scene that really didn't work, and you touched on it a little bit, is
Yeah.
we don't know why they're here and why
Yeah.
they're doing what they're doing. Not at
No.
all. It was like, we gotta go get Conrad. I'm like, okay, who is Conrad? Like, why are
Yeah.
we getting him? Why are we here? Why are we killing all of these people? I don't understand. Like, what is the purpose of this? Because
Yeah.
the other bit, again, it was hazy remembering the first movie, but like in the first movie, I remembered them choosing their missions so strategically. And
Yeah.
there's also a danger to it too. If you choose the wrong mission, then that can cause you harm. You can be found out, like all of these things. Like that was very clearly in the first movie. And so then we're just plopped here and just killing
Yeah.
dudes. It's like, for what? Like,
Why?
what are we doing? You guys are the good guys trying to save humanity. So what are we doing here? Why is all of this
Mm,
violence necessary to complete your mission? And I don't feel like they ever really touched on that. I mean, at the end it was like, "Oh, there's all the weapons. The CIA is going to come and get it and handle it." And it was just kind of like a
mm,
throwaway like, "Oh yeah, that's
mhm.
why we're here." And then Niall gets like a really cool like staff thing. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool weapon. Good for you. Enjoy your new toy. I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's not clear what they're doing there, how it helps the larger mission, how it helps save humanity. Like, we really could have used like a mission debrief at the beginning, which is
Mhm.
annoying and lazy and exposition heavy,
Yeah.
but honestly would have helped. I feel
Yeah.
like a mission debrief, or like I guess that's not a debrief because it hasn't happened yet, but like the mission plan, like, okay, guys, let's huddle together. You and you go do this. We're going to go
Mhm.
do this. We have to get these weapons before da 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 da. Set the
Yeah.
table, set the stakes, let us know the players, and then we can go. Like, it's
Mhm.
lazy, but just a couple lines of dialogue, I feel like could have really helped
Saved
get
this.
us
Yeah.
ready for this, I don't know, action set piece that I didn't think was that exciting, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think this goes back to the script and the dialogue because really exquisite, stellar filmmaking could have accomplished all of that context and the emotional stakes within a few lines of dialogue in that opening short bit where they're in the forest. And we would have been grounded enough to go and do this mission and feel the emotions of it or the stakes or the implications of failing or not failing and why this is their mission. Like a few lines of dialogue, great filmmaking can efficiently do that. Good filmmaking will give us the mission debrief, like scene beforehand with the group of them huddled together and do what a Mission Impossible Final Reckoning does. It's like, this is our plan. And then we watch it either happen or doesn't happen. Poor filmmaking is when we don't even get any of that at all. Like, we really just flying blind, being like, okay, let's go. And we have no context for how the characters are feeling, what their goal is individually, and then what the larger meta uber goal is for their mission in general. Like, we had like not even any of those elements I think were included in. And that's really impressive because they have some lines of dialogue. It's really quite interesting how characters are talking to each other in this movie, but I feel like it's like they're never really saying anything useful, which is kind of like an again very impressive that there were words that were spoken, but it doesn't really mean anything, and it's not what we need at any given moment. So that's kind of hard to do. Once again, impressed with this movie's ability to do that somehow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
the other thing that I think that this film is missing is that groundedness that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, obviously, it is a very fantastical tale, and we have immortal beings and all that yada yada. So that's the fantastical part. But we need
Mm.
something grounded. We need
Hmm.
to understand basic things like, where are we in space? Where are we in time? What is happening? Like, there's some
Of
moments
course.
where they're in France, and then I think next we're in like Italy, and then all of a sudden we're in Seoul, and I'm like,
Yeah. Why?
hold the phone. How much time has passed? Because like France and South Korea are not next to each other. This is
Yeah.
going to take some time to travel from point A to point B. And I feel like there was a lot of that, of like, okay, we're here and we're going to have a conversation. And then in the next minute, we're in this totally different country that's on a different part of the earth. And
Yeah.
it's fine. And we act as though only minutes have passed. And I was just
Yeah.
like, wait, guys, we were just over there. What are we doing here now? And then we just go back and forth in a really insane manner. And so
Hmm.
I was so confused about where we were the entire time, because we were just
Hmm.
traveling in ways that did not make sense to me, and I didn't understand why we had to go to Seoul the first time. And
Yeah.
then, we're going to this other place. I was just like, why are we going where we're going? And then we would end up back in Seoul, but they didn't tell us that that's where we were. And so I was like, what is going on? So I think it really needed that grounding. And I think it goes back to those like basic like screenwriting principles that I feel like the script is missing, is like,
Yeah.
if you have this very larger than life, fantastical tale, I feel like you need to have elements of it that are very grounded to help us go along with this journey. You can't have it all feel so like fluid and hard to pin down. You need, especially for something like this, you need to know where we are in place. We need to know where we are in
Mm,
time. And then when it comes to like the immortality stuff, we need rules and we need to understand the rules for it to make sense. But everything just felt squishy and like unclear and almost convenient. Like,
yeah.
oh, we need to be here. So now we're here for no reason. It's fine. The plot needed us to be here. So now that's where we are. I was just like, guys, can we just pick a spot? Why do we have to keep going all these places? I don't understand.
The birthmark is such a great example of just convenience. I'm like,
Yes.
bro, at least make it like a cool tattoo or something. You know what I mean? Like, they literally couldn't think of any other reason to visually showcase how Uma Thurman's character was connected to Kiki Lane's character. So, birthmark on your left wrist is what we came up with. I was like, yo, they didn't think of anything else. They were like, yeah, I don't know. You're born with that thing, so I guess she has that thing, and you have that thing. Therefore, you guys are connected. Therefore, apparently, this might take down all of the rules of immortality. All of a sudden, like I thought was so. I laughed out loud when she was like, "Look on your left wrist. Do you have the same marking too?" Oh, it's so lazy. It's so lazy. Oh, it's so great. I
Mhm.
there's I think what I really craved, um, partially it's the world building and the rules. I just wanted to know what the characters' goals and desires were. I felt like I had no idea what their mission is, what their job is. It comes a little bit later in the film where their mission or their purpose is to protect humanity, whatever that means, protectors of humanity over time, which I then remembered that the first movie was so much about that. And then kind of like self sacrificially living forever to just kind of be like these guardian angels for humanity, which is really interesting and intervening when humanity is like destroying themselves. So fascinating. But I didn't know that. I forgot about that, and I didn't know that until like literally the last third of the movie. And there's a point where when Charlize goes to meet Henry Golding's character for the first time at his home, and she says to him, "I almost stopped believing in our purpose." And I went, tell me what your purpose is. Don't know. Why is this conversation ending? I need to know what your purpose is because I really have no idea. I know that you are immortal and you have this crew, and I remember your crew, but I forget what is your desire. And I think that is like bare bones, like table stakes of screenwriting is even if the plot is terrible, if we have a character that's captivating with a desire that we know clearly and understand, we'll go along on any journey, you know, even if the way that that desire is fulfilled, thwarted, wrestled with is not exactly how we want to see it. We know who this person is and what they're aiming towards, and they've got direction. And I felt like I had no idea what any of these characters were doing here. So I think that was really fascinating is how hazy all of that was. And by the time they start to voice it later on in the context of the conflict with Discord, it's like, there's only 20 minutes left of this movie, and now I just figured it out. So I think that was really fascinating too, is how little we had understanding of what they were doing. And but every time they're changing locations, like you mentioned, I'm not sure why they're there. I'm like, oh, we're globe trotting because that's what we do in an action movie. We globe trot because we love spectacle, and so let's throw in interesting locations to go see. A little travel,
Yes.
little world travel,
Yeah.
shall we?
You know, gotta get those miles, you know?
Yes.
I think the other thing that I found really frustrating while watching the movie, and now I find more frustrating having now
Seen
rewatched
the
the
first
first
one.
film, is this whole ending immortality, you can transfer your immortality
Oh,
to somebody else business. I think there's a way to do that that's interesting. The film doesn't do it that way. It's just kind
yeah.
of like, oh, hey, yeah, there's this thing that we've never talked about before, but here you go. You can just be stabbed, and then you can just like wish that she gets your powers, and then voila, magical powers happen. Everyone's happy. Um, I think there's a way to do that and do it well. But what I'm really upset about with that now is in the first film, when they're explaining to Niall how like the powers work and how your immortality works,
Yeah.
they explain that eventually your immortality just goes away and they don't know why. They're just like, you just stop healing at some point in time. Yeah, it's so
Really?
smart. Yes, they talk
That's so
about that.
fun.
Right? It's such a better way to go. Cause then, and they have that conversation like, I don't know, maybe like a third of the way into the movie. And then things start to go haywire and
Yeah.
dudes are captured and tortured and things like that. And people are getting shot and stabbed and tortured and things. And
Yeah.
throughout all of those, it's like, oh my gosh, could this be the time that one of them just loses their powers and we don't know why? And I think that that lingering threat of your
Ah, yeah.
powers could just disappear at any point is fascinating. And the fact that they continue to choose to put themselves in danger, knowing that it's kind of just like a ticking time bomb and they don't know
Yeah.
when it's going to go off. And one day they might just not heal. That is so interesting to me. And that I think speaks a
Mm,
lot about their character and what motivates them, and also gives them a sense of like, okay, do I need to consider this before I step into this dangerous situation? I don't know. I think that inclusion is so much more interesting for the characters, and I think sets up some really interesting tension and stakes
yeah.
far more than this whole like you get
Mm,
stabbed by Niall and then your powers go away, which also doesn't really match up with what happens in the first movie, but whatever, it's fine. We're just
we shoehorned that
vibes
in.
doing what we want. So yeah, I really wish that they would have kept that vein of things because
Yeah.
that's, I think, a lot more interesting than what we have in this film.
Mm. And it's really smart of the first film to do that because inevitably, when you have people that are quote unquote immortal fighting, there's there's no stakes in that, right? So when they get wounded, we're like, yeah, they're gonna heal themselves. And the first film added this interesting like unpredictability in to the mix that adds stakes and almost adds even greater stakes because every battle, every fight, we're looking for, oh my God, they didn't heal. Oh, okay, they healed. Okay, good, 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 good. There's a sigh of relief. But the unknown of when you lose your powers almost mirrors the unknown of like for us as like mortal human beings, like we don't know when we're going to die. So it's a genius way to add stakes that are almost looming larger uh, without like compromising obviously the rules of the universe, which is that they are immortal for now. That's really smart because I felt that a lot during a lot of the fight sequences in this movie as well. I'm like, well, they're immortal, they're gonna be fine. So, like, okay, stab them away. Honestly, I'm like, stab them more so I can see the cool shots of like their flesh like healing back together. Uh, and I think it can take away from the action thrill, which is the base of any action sequence. Is thrill is basically our main character that we're rooting for could die at any moment. That's the real stakes. And when that isn't there, then we just are watching things happen. We're watching activity instead of feeling so deeply invested and fearing for our beloved character that we're following. So, uh, that whole fight sequence with Charlize Theron and Uma Thurman's characters at the end there, I'm like, well, she's got immortality. Like, we're fine. We're good. I mean, I'm more intrigued to see if she's going to get to kill her big bad foe that is mortal, and she doesn't obviously because she's going to get away. But yeah, that's such a smart world building rule that the first one included in, and we don't have any like interesting world building stuff. I think that happens in this movie at all.
The
Yeah.
other thing that the first movie does really well that I wanted more of in the second one
Mm.
is because Andy, Charlize's character, becomes mortal like halfway through the first film. She loses her immortality, and we don't
Oh,
know why.
why?
But
Oh, okay.
it just runs out eventually, and
Yeah.
um, and so there's still this one big battle set piece, the final action set piece that she's in the midst of, and she's immortal. Like she can die. She gets big injured in this fight. And it's so cool to watch the teamwork of everybody. And the way that they move together as a unit is so cool because they have
Yeah.
Charlize kind of in the middle and they're like protecting her and guarding her. And so when people are shooting at her, they're taking the bullets and then somebody will come from behind her and shoot the person that was shooting at her. Like it's so cool watching this group move together as
Yeah.
one cohesive unit to protect their leader who has now lost her immortality. And you
Mm.
were constantly aware of the fact that she can die now. And it's so
Mhm.
tense. And you can feel everybody in that scene is also so worried. They don't want to lose her. But of course, she's not going to sit this out. So I wish that there was more of that, especially because the second movie picks up and she's still immortal in this. But you
Yeah.
don't feel that same level of tension and stress. And obviously, like it's been a little bit of time since she became mortal. They may have gone on other missions since then or whatever. But like, I don't know. I think that that was a missed opportunity to show this team working together. Like we were just talking about, seeing them working as a unit. Because when people work together, you learn about their personalities. And I
Yeah.
think that that could have been a lot more entertaining rather than having the group split off into two. I mean, I guess three, because Niall really isn't even in it until the end. So if
Yeah.
they had had everybody working together as a unit, trying to protect their leader, who is now mortal, I think that that could have been a lot better opening that might have answered a lot of our questions that we walked into this movie with.
Mm. Mhm. Yeah. We we barely see this team together. Uh And I remember there were so many great scenes in the first one where we see the chemistry and the rapport of that team. And I remember really feeling the deep care and kind of the like centuries of time spent together between the crew. This one, I'm like, they barely know each other, like there's something about maybe the way the script is written and the way that this team could draw out those performances from the character where it feels like even in the scenes where they're all in a room together, they're just like going through the motions of we're doing the scene where the group is together being like, what's our plan now? But there's no emotional connection and depth that you feel. Again, quite impressive at how this film is able to do that because it's like they're doing all the right beats, but there's no substance, there's no meat, there's no emotional core that feels deeply resonant at the center of it. But we are hitting some of the right beats that we're supposed to after the big action set piece. You get the crew together with the low morale and have them do the whole like, oh my god, what do we do now thing. And they do that scene, but they don't talk about anything substantial. There's no emotional connection that happens. There's no person that's like lamenting how hard this is and another character that's able to step in and like there's no emotional meat somehow. I'm just so impressed again at its ability to do
Yeah.
that. But it knows that we need to do a scene like that.
hmm
Amazing.
And
Yeah.
that's why I've kind of come to the conclusion that this was like a 2.5 hour movie, and they cut it into two parts because, and then they
Yeah.
just made the first half longer because you can't really have like an hour long movie, and they just filled it with kind of nothing and just, I don't know,
Yeah.
meaningless fluff that just, I don't know, I found boring. So I wish that they would have just, instead of trying to make this into two, just give us one solid story that makes sense and has rules that are logical that you can follow. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's so much in this. When we finally got to like the last third, like the big action sequence in the last third, I was like, wait, we're already almost done with this movie? Like nothing has happened. Like how are we already at the end? I'm so
Yeah.
confused. So I'm so annoyed that we couldn't have gotten something better out of this. We didn't need it to be as great as the first movie, but
Mhm.
man, something that's good because the world is so good. You got all the
Yeah.
original actors back too, and they're all
Yeah.
fantastic. Why couldn't we make something even good out of this? It's very frustrating.
It's crazy how empty this film is. Uh I just am impressed. I actually had the same feeling watching this movie that I had watching Megalopolis, which is the two times in my life that I've had this feeling, which is a movie is happening to me, but I feel so disconnected from it, even though I'm aware of what emotion I'm supposed to be feeling. And the scenes where Charlize is confronting Quinn, like I know what that scene is supposed to be doing, but I feel like so much distance from it because I feel so disengaged from the characters that I'm like watching a movie happen, but I am not in this world. I am not immersed. I am not connected in. And I think it's really challenging to do that because you give any character even an ounce of humanity and we will buy in immediately. How much and how intensely, obviously, is a spectrum. Great movies suck you in absolutely, and you feel like you are that character and you resonate with that character. But even like a fine movie, I'll use Mission Impossible: Final Reckoning because I think it's a good example of like straightforward storytelling that isn't like necessarily groundbreaking, but is like solid enough and accomplishes a purpose. That movie, you know exactly what all of the beats are, and you feel invested in this character, even though you know it's overly simplistic and whatnot. You still are like rooting for Ethan Hunt to accomplish his mission, even a little bit, And it's amazing how a movie is able to give us a little bit and we'll just buy in. And so for a film to really not give us an ounce, I really am gotta give it to it because uh I think we never see beyond the characters like doing their parts. I don't know. It feels very sterile almost, and it's an odd feeling to have with a movie because like most movies, even if they're okay, don't ever create this feeling for me. So I really have so much to think about and analyze with this one at Megalopolis because Megalopolis did the same thing too. There's big emotion and emotional scenes, but I think it goes back to we don't know who these characters are and we don't know what they want. We don't know why they're doing what they're doing. So there's so much disconnect when that happens and confusion that I think is interesting to experience as it's unfolding on the screen.
I think another piece of that is, if we're able to be sucked into a world or sucked into these characters and their journey, then we're able to suspend our disbelief and like allow ourselves to go on this ride.
Yeah,
And I think, especially a movie like this, where we have characters that are basically superheroes, like we need to be able to suspend our disbelief. But because there's nothing really there for us to grip onto and be sucked into
yeah,
this ride, I was just passively analyzing everything. And I was like, this logically does not make sense. And I feel like
mm,
every time something happened, I was like, nope, that doesn't make sense. Nope, that's not how that would happen. Nope. Like I had my analytical hat on, as I always do. But there was nothing to even get me like wrapped up in the story so that I could take that off for a little bit to enjoy. It was just, I think you're right because it's so
Sarah.
uh we feel so separate from the characters and separate from the action on the screen. We have no emotional investment. So then if there are any kind of inconsistencies, we're not able to write it off, which just takes us further out of the movie. And then the cycle just kind
Yeah,
of continues. Um just because, man, the script is just bad. The screenplay is just very bad.
yeah, yeah. It's it's a special flavor, I think, of something not working well. You know, I compared it to Blonde earlier as a different, I think, as an example of a different type of movie that didn't work, and that one's problematic. But that one has an emotional core, and that film, although pushes forward kind of a strange view and an agenda around like viewing this woman through a specific lens that like I don't agree with nor do I want to put on, there was still a connection that we felt with the character, and an investment in that character and rooting for her and understanding why she's feeling the way things that she's feeling. And while we still have perhaps that lens on of viewing this and analyzing it from like a third perspective, there's still that side of us that I think is invested in the emotions of what's happening on the screen. And if anything, part of why I feel so strongly about that movie is because I felt so invested in this female character who was, I think, being portrayed in this like really strange way that was problematic. And so there was emotion, you know, of any kind. And it's amazing how a film like this is able to be so devoid of emotional connection, when there are scenes that are deeply emotional. This best friendship that has been broken apart, and this betrayal, that's emotional. That should be so relatable for us as humans. And somehow I'm like, okay, wait, so what was the promise you guys made again? And like, what were your expectations and how come she broke those? I didn't get that part, you know? Uh,
Yeah.
I didn't understand. It took me a while to like piece together, like, why, what was the history between her and Quinn? Because there's emotion happening, but I have no idea what this, clearly she's upset and clearly she's feeling guilt, but what happened again? Why? No.
Well, and like I wish that there would have been some someone searching for Quinn. Like can we have some of that in there? The what I so while watching the second movie, the scene where Quinn is in Booker's apartment, that happens at the end of the first movie. So when I was watching it in the second movie, having forgotten the first movie, I was like, wait,
Oh.
this feels very familiar. And it's because it's in the first movie. So you get the
Oh.
initial like she's in his apartment and then it cuts to black.
At the
Um,
end of the first movie?
at the end of the first movie. So we
Oh.
have seen a glimpse of that before. And
Oh.
I wish though that this movie, because they do talk about Quinn in the first movie, so I
Yeah.
wish that the second one would have started with like Charlize looking for her, like they because they mention her, they talk about her. It's very clearly a sore spot for
Yeah.
Andy, and we don't know exactly what's going on, but we know that there is emotion there in the first film. And so I think that that maybe could have been a good place to like pick up again, is she's searching for her friend, or she had just gotten back from searching for her friend and couldn't find her. And setting that up of who Quinn
Yeah.
is and what Quinn means to this group first, and then we can have, Uma actually finding her, bringing her under her wing, all of that kind of stuff. I think maybe then that would have made a little bit more
That's good.
sense. And then the reconciliation that they have at the end of the film between Andy and Quinn maybe would have made a little bit more sense, because it just
Yeah.
in the second film it just happens way too quickly. And I'm also like, ma'am, you are now mortal and you're going off on this mission with a whole like abdomen wound situation. Like, you should not be moving as well as you're moving right now. This does not make sense, but it's fine. Whatever. What is logic in this film about immortal beings? But I think emotionally, that reconciliation was not set up very well. I didn't buy it. It was just like, oh, the movie is over, so they have to reconcile so that they can be friends going into the next film.
Yeah, because there's such deep betrayal, but we never see how they got to resolving it. I have no idea what conversation happened that all of a sudden they're like, oh no, we besties again, even though you abandoned me to suffocate forever at the bottom of the ocean. It's fine. Like, no idea how we got from point A to point B, actually. I didn't even think about that. I was just like, oh, okay, this movie's already over. Thank God. Okay. Honestly, I was more fixated on, I think they made Andy's character much more unlikable in this movie, which I kept feeling. And I don't know if it was just a me thing because I'm just annoyed, but she's in subtle ways kind of like really dismissive of a lot of characters that are trying to like help her and care for her. And that's totally fine because I can understand that maybe there's a lot of emotional turmoil that she's experiencing and it's coming out in these like weird ways where she's snapping at people because my gosh, like we all know what that is like. I know definitely know what that's like. But I didn't see that as the root source of it. And so there's just like these so many moments where there's this like air of dismissiveness that I felt with Andy and how other people are trying to like help her, come alongside her, like encourage her, whatever. And she's just like kind of dismissive. So at one point, Niall is talking about like wanting to go and help her find Quinn, and she's like, I want to keep you safe because like you're mortal and like you would do the same thing for me. And um she said something along the lines of like, I've always been this way, blah blah blah. And I was like, no, but something. And she's like, I've been this way for thousands of years, and walks away. And I'm like, okay, Auntie, like just because you've lived for longer, you're just gonna like throw that in her face, you know? And then even in the end, like I know it makes for some banter between her and Quinn as like a sign of their trust being restored and their rapport and connection being restored. But I'm like, when she's like, you can fight alongside me now, I'm like, I felt so satisfying hearing Quinn being like, no, actually, you're fighting alongside me. Like, you know, like, why is it not? I love that we get to fight together again. Why is it like alongside me? It's so weird the way it's written. And Andy's character is so selfless and giving in the first movie. And that's part of what makes her captivating and such a strong leader for this group is she's so protective and wanting to give literally her life for her team. And so there was just this air of like self-centeredness in this movie that I was like, maybe I'm being too sensitive to it, but it felt strange. And I think it would have been interesting if that is a result of her feeling a lot of the guilt of Quinn resurfacing and reprocessing all of that again. And it's just kind of lashing out. Great. Love to see that, you know, like so real. But it didn't feel like that was the reason why. It just felt like they made her character really weird and self serving in these weird ways. Through subtle comments, too. She's not even like lashing out that much. It's just like lens dynamics that's subtly being slipped out in the way that she
Mm.
speaks.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because in the first one, like, she's a jerk, but, like, a really
Oh, okay.
lovable jerk, and,
Oh,
you
okay.
know, is,
Yeah.
like, hardened,
Jaded.
world-weary,
Yes.
yes, very jaded, and, like, that's an interesting journey that she goes on meeting this new immortal. And that
Mm,
creates such interesting tension. And she starts to lose some of that. And like, that's the beauty of her coming to understand like the effect that they've had on history. Cause like the whole movie, she's like, ugh, we've been doing all of this and it's for nothing. I'm done. I'm over this. I'm out, like that's
mm,
kind of her vibe. And she's just
mm.
kind of grumpy, which I would be too. If I were immortal and had lived for thousands of years, I
Oh,
would also be
I'm
a
just
grump.
tired.
I'm saying, let the
Yeah.
woman have a break. And so that's really interesting and works really, really well in the first movie. And then in this one, I don't know. It's almost like they just took that same grumpiness and overlaid it, but didn't have anything beneath the surface. The
Mm,
first one I feel like does such a good job of letting us know why she's so hardened and why she's so jaded. And we understand that she has fought for thousands of years to help people, and it's come for nothing. There's been no payoff. And so she's just being dragged into new conflicts that she didn't want to be in. And
mm.
for why? You know? And
Yeah.
the other piece that the first movie does really well is it emphasizes their fear of being captured because they know that if they're captured, they're going
Yes.
to be tortured and they can't
For
die
eternity.
from torture. They will just be
Yeah.
tortured for as long as they're tortured for forever. And so, like, all of that is in there. So you can see her fear and her guilt and her world weariness in the first film. And I didn't feel any of that in the second film. And I'm just like, what are we doing? If
Yeah.
Charlize cannot save this movie, we've done something wrong. Like, she can do so much with next to nothing. And you get so little in this movie. And I'm just like,
Mhm.
wow, like one of the best actresses working today. Like, she is
Yes.
phenomenal.
Yes.
And you still don't get a lot from this character. That is
Mhm.
the screenplay's fault. And
Yeah.
I, like you have been saying, it's impressive how bad it is that even she couldn't elevate this to at least a semi enjoyable experience.
Because there's moments where Charlize is doing her magical Charlize thing, and the emotions of the moment feel really real. The scene where Booker is sacrificing himself and she's just banging on the glass. Like, I felt something genuinely in that scene. But then the few seconds that it's over, I'm like, wait, I forget why I was supposed to feel that way. Like, I forget what their relationship was like again. And then I forget, like, didn't he betray them at that one time at some point? Like, but then I guess, like, yes, but their connection goes on. But so like that kicks in where there's like the emotion that's disconnected from anything, which I think makes it feel like vapor. And there's scenes. I mean, there's a rough script too with the dialogue. I'm like, hey, you can act as well as you can, but man, if you got to deliver some cringeworthy lines, it's gonna be rough. A moment where I literally bust out laughing is in the Henry Golding library scene. This is like a great example of like what happened with the script and the dialogue. Henry Golding is introducing the concept of there's this woman named Discord, and he says she goes by Discord, and then Copley's like, that sounds ominous, and he goes, you bet. It's like, yo, this is some gold right here. Oh, I was like, this is what we're working with. I see. Let me recalibrate again, once again. I think that happens like a third of the way in. So we've experienced the opening scene, we're still wandering, and then that library scene happens. And I was like, I thought I knew what we were in for, but now let me like recalibrate again down to here what we're in for. And there's just, there's so many moments like that are capturing like what we've seen to be very like melodramatic moments in movies. You know, Quinn telling her, oh, is this the part where you say this is not you, this is not who you are? You know, it's just, we know what we're supposed to feel, but somehow it's just comical. It doesn't work at all. It's so devoid. That is such a powerful line. Honestly, it's so cheesy, but like in the right context, we'll buy into it every single time. And we just can't buy into it this time, okay? We just couldn't do it. We tried to leap, we could not leap.
I'm sorry to keep comparing this to the first movie, but the first movie is so good.
Yeah.
And I was expecting upon rewatch to be like, maybe like the world building is really good, but maybe like the dialogue isn't very good cuz it is an action movie on Netflix. Like, maybe the script
Yeah.
is a little rough. And there are moments in the first one where I was like, that's not great, but there are some killer lines in this first movie. In
Mm.
addition to it being like paced really well, there are some great moments of dialogue. And just like, I I wanted to have this movie on just kind of like in the background while I was doing other things. I actually ended up sitting down and watching the entire thing because I was so
Wow.
like hooked into what was going on. And there were some lines that just like gave me chills. They were so good.
Ah,
And it just makes
I
me
love that.
so angry about the second movie because it's not like this was a good world with good action and like mediocre dialogue. No, like
Yeah.
this was a really good movie across like all of the different levels.
dimension.
Even the music was awesome. Like there's some bangers in the first movie, whereas
Yeah,
the music in the second one is kind of painful at times. Like everything about this second movie is just a very poor imitation of the first film. And it's just, man, it's just upsetting. Like,
yeah,
if you're gonna make a sequel, it doesn't have to be as good as the first one. Sequels rarely are, but
yeah,
it should be like in the same ballpark ish. You know, you shouldn't have like a really, really good movie and then something that is like barely watchable as your sequel. That I'm just like, why do that?
yeah.
Why
What
do
happened?
this? It's so frustrating.
Well, they've got another shot.
Hmm.
We're we're gonna get another movie to close out this trilogy, perhaps. So they've got another chance to swing at it again, and hopefully, the laws of gravity mean that the pendulum will swing back to the other direction. We shall see. We shall see. They're gonna have to really figure out how to weave this thing together now that there's kind of a break in the middle whole storyline and emotional moments that should feed into and build towards the third movie. But yeah, any other last thoughts about the Old Guard 2 before we wrap, or anything that you're hoping to see in the third movie?
I'm hoping not to see a third movie. But the other thing that I don't know that we like really touched on it is this whole ending with the helicopter and her trying to charge at a helicopter. Like, what are we doing, ma'am? You are a whole person. That is a whole helicopter. I don't care if you're immortal again. You versus helicopter is just not a good idea. And then we have the whole fight with her and Discord. This is why we shouldn't have people naming themselves. Because why are you naming yourself Discord? You are not a server. Stop it. Um, that whole thing was also a mess. And I don't understand if Discord is now mortal and she fell from the helicopter like that, she should have gone splat. She should have died
Mm-hmm.
right then. There's no way that a human would survive that fall. And then she
Yeah.
just goes and like beats up Andy. It's fine. Andy almost seemed to like give up in the end though, so I didn't understand that.
Mm.
Ugh, just that whole ending fight. I was so frustrated. Starting with the helicopters, ending with that fight. The whole thing looked awful. It was so dark. It was just not good. I'm like, this is an action movie. Like, we can forgive a lot in action movies, okay? The plot can make no sense. The characters can be thinly written, but
Just look
give
good.
us good action. And I
Yeah.
don't feel like this movie even delivered on that.
No, I agree. That's another thing that I jotted down about the opening scene is that it looks terrible. It looks so bad. The lighting's really off. There's so many like harsh shadows. The bright spots look really overexposed, and then it I don't know, like they probably just were working with a very like slim budget and just needed to get this made, I'm sure. But man, just that like base level quality visually, I think isn't even there. I mean, it's hard to do an action movie on a low budget. I know, I'm sure. So like, give us the overhead shot with like men running and blah blah blah. Like that's fine, but it just it looked so bad. It looked like I was like, actually, at the thought I was like, this feels like thesis project film with like shoestring budget that we just scraped together, and like someone who's like really trying to make a film and got something made. Like it just is not at the level of table stakes quality that I think a film should have. So I think visually it's also just looking rough out here in these streets. So uh man, I don't know.
Yeah.
Get that original crew back together somehow and then give this movie
Right?
just a little bit more money for the third one and tell just an okay story and maybe we'll be satisfied. Um, it's it's such a shame because I think the concept of immortality is so revered as a desired state in like literature storytelling that has like transcended beyond millennium. And I loved in the first movie that this film, this world flips that on its head and says like there are real costs and there's a weariness, there's a jadedness, there's a real fear of being immortal and kind of the burdens of being immortal that I think was so cool and so fascinating. And there's almost a catharsis and a freedom that comes with knowing that you're living every moment at its fullest and that you could go at any moment. And that's a beautiful message in a film that is touching on something that's like a very real dynamic, a very real fear, a very real rules of our universe for us as humans is that we are very mortal and like constantly face the effects of that and the costs of that and the freedom of that every day. And there's so much potential here. So we'll see what they did with the third one. We'll see if we review it based on the reviews, maybe. Maybe curiosity will kill the cat, you know. We just have to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, we'll see when it comes out and what else is coming out around that time, because maybe we'll have
Yeah.
other things to do instead.
Yeah. If the reviews are bad, we should just do a watch along straight up for that movie. That'd be funny.
We should, or we could just re-review the first one because the first one still rocks. So
Yes. Down. Love it.
either way would be good.
Yes. All right. Well, this is our review, discussion, roast analysis of The Old Guard 2. You can find it available on Netflix. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Movies and Us. Our name sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune to your favorite shows. Drop us a rating and review, letting us know if you watched the first movie, The Old Guard, and what you loved about the first movie. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us. We will be back next week with a watch-along, a different type of episode for the movie Clueless, classic, 90s classic. Such a fun time to revisit. So we hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.